as a last demo, I want to show you how to self-host SSL and client certificate-based applications. And for that, I went to a command line and want to show you the OWIN-host exe, which is basically the self-host that ships, as the OWIN-host NuGet package, or that you can also download separately. And the idea is with OWIN-host exe is that basically you go to the directory where your application binaries, your DLLs are in, and OWIN-host exe will inspect the current directory, find the entry point like your startup class, and then host the application. So when I run that without any parameters, you can see that it basically defaults to localhost port 5000. Now, we have two things here. First of all, we want to enable SSL, and the other thing is that we have to bind to a certain machine or host name so that our SSL requirements are satisfied, like the web.local, for example, we need to be able to call that in the browser. So when we try that, let's say HTTPS web.local, and let's use, for example, port 444. Then we will get an access denied. Why? I briefly mentioned that in the first module that when you want to open an HTTP port, there are certain restrictions, like if you want to open that port in a way that it's accessible from the outside, meaning not listening to localhost only, then you need to be an admin or have an admin make a so-called reservation for you that you are able to do that. And the other problem is we need to associate the certificate that we want to use with that port. So for that, I showed you in the first module hpconfig. So let's start with that. Let's go to SSL, add, say we want to, open up port 444, and we want to use the web.local certificate. And then we can press OK and say apply. Okay, that was the easy part. The second part is the permission. So now there are a number of formats and options that you can use. So I mentioned that in the first module. So first of all, we have to do HPS here, because we want to listen on HPS. And then HPSys supports a syntax here. So for example, the plus is called a strong wildcard, which binds to all network interfaces and arbitrary names on the machine. Or if you want to use, or if you only want to bind to like our web.local hostname, for example, then you would use this syntax here. And the port number, obviously, and never forget the last slash. The point here is this string has to match with whatever you pass into OWIN-host. Okay, so there's some scoping going on. So when you register for the plus 444 slash, then you also have to use the plus 444 slash in the U parameter with OWIN-host. Right now there's a bug in Visual Studio which doesn't allow you to start OWIN-host like that. So I'm going to use web.local :444. Okay, and now we have to specify which user account should be able to open that port, and that is in my case my account. That could be your your service account, like if you're running an NT service, or whichever user should be able to do that. And then we click apply here. So let's try that again. And this time we were able to start our listener. So let's go to our client application and change our base address. So we are now listening on this address here. So in other words, if we run our client from here, that's working now as well with our self-hosted server. Okay, so that seems to work. So let's just drop out here, and we can also go here into our web properties, switch to OWIN host, and then do our HTTPS web.local port 444 here, and run that directly from Visual Studio, and that should give us the same output. Yeah, we have started that. You know, our certificate dialog comes up in the browser, and we can go to API identity and see the claims. Now there's one thing that is, you know, nice to know, and when you are configuring the SSL association, let's go to SSL again and look for our 444. Then, and you go to edit. There's one. There are a number of options, by the way, and I don't want to go over all of them, but one is relevant for client certificates, and that's this one here: negotiate client certificates. So you have basically two options. You've seen that in IIS that there was this require client certificate flag. This is an IIS feature. It's not an HTTP SYS feature, and we have basically we mimicked that feature using our require TLS middleware. Now the other thing is right now we haven't configured anything that that tells the client to send along the client certificate, for example, in the browser case. So the way this works is you can either say negotiate client certificates here, then right at the start of the SSL connection, the server will send back a flag basically telling the client, hey, I'd like to see a client certificate now. Either, you know, start the selection process using, you know, an interactive UI, or, you know, or send me along one. You are now informed that I need that. If you don't set this flag here, then what's happening under the covers is that the first time your application is trying to access the client certificate, then a so-called where will that happen? For in our case, that's basically here. The first time I'm trying to access the SSL.client certificate entry in the dictionary, and there is no client certificate, then the server will send back basically a signal to the client, like saying, hey, I'd like to have a client certificate, can you send me one? From that point on, it's not for sure that the client will send you one, but that's up to us then to basically validate or make sure that there is actually one that satisfies our needs, and, you know, we did that with our require SSL middleware or require TLS middleware. Okay, so to summarize that, you can switch to OWIN host. You need the SSL association, so associate an SSL server certificate with the port that you want to use. Either do the client cert negotiation at the beginning or do it on demand, and the account that opens the port needs to have the privilege to do so, and again that is done using hpconfig or the netsh tool as I've shown you in the first module.